Real quick, I just want to kind of introduce everybody here so you guys get a full breadth of who is on the panel. Jerome is Chief Marketing Officer of Rambus. Rambus is a rather large corporation that has a ton of IP. And they early on they did not have one of the best reputations, but if you guys get to know who Jerome is one of the most empathetic. He's a new executive there. He's built incredible products across Europe. One of the most empathetic guys that I've ever met, and you're a wearable dude in so many ways. He's one of the most kick-ass cyclists in the entire state of California and in our country. Just incredible as a cyclist. His mother is French, so he loves his wine and amongst other things. But in general, like, he's been charged to help change how Rambus rolls out products, how they interact in the world, and they're actually a pretty startup-oriented company. And as you guys get to know Jerome and what Rambus is to him and where that company's going, I think you'll see some really cool things. Remi, you are the entrepreneur that everybody here wants to be, in the sense that pre-product and before everything else kind of hit the fan, you guys have raised $50 million. You created a product so that everybody here is really focused on building things. You're focused on enabling their technology to create some really cool, interesting stuff with photos and pictures and videos and space and time. You're also a great dude to drink with. And in general, you actually generally care about the ecosystem, the space, and people. And I met Aya a few years back just by chance, and somebody was like, yeah, I was like, startups and ventures, and who's that guy at Microsoft? Aya is that guy. And I asked a few people, because sometimes there's that guy in one group and he's not that guy to another group. But if you talk to all the different groups around ventures and around startups and around things that are happening within that ecosystem, be it BizSpark or be it the New Ventures organization, Aya is that guy. And so if you guys ever want to do anything on a startup side that touches with Microsoft, you won't necessarily deal with Aya, you'll deal with somebody from his team. He is that dude. He's one of those guys that cares about the ecosystem and the startups that he does. And so I'm actually really glad to have him on stage as well. And so now that we have all these guys on stage, the first thing that I want to ask is, where are wearables going in the next 5 months, in the next 6 months, in the next 36 months? In your guys' opinion, and also, what do you think is going to hold us back within the ecosystem? Where do you guys see it happening? And Jerome, please.
So, firstly, how many people know Rambus?
It's not on.
Okay, there we are. How many of you know Rambus? I get one. So you might know that this is a 23-year-old startup, not really making product, but sort of BASF, sort of the what's inside the products that you know. The company got into a little bit of trouble, as you might know, being categorized as patent troll because of the assertion to protect its IP. This is all in transition, and there's some brilliant underlying technologies that we think are very relevant to the wearable and IoT space in general. So what I would look at over the next set of years coming. Firstly, I think we're at a point where people are looking for use case and utility and perceived value out of what exists today. And the ability to integrate more sensors in a meaningful, verticalized way where the devices make sense for verticalized applications. So for example, I'm a cyclist, and the dynamics of cycling have changed incredibly. It used to be you'd go out and you'd log your miles and you put them on a spreadsheet or on graph paper. Now everything is connected. Not only your heart, power, everything is mashed up. Devices can do this in very powerful and exciting ways. And we'll talk about that more. Remi?
I believe there's a big trend coming, obviously, on wearable. It will not be all of us here together. A lot of you are wearing glasses right now. I think actually that's definitely a form factor which is here to stay on the long run. I believe there is a lot of room for evolution on that form factor, specifically to move away from just acquisition of data, but also to process the data, to go and understand the world that you're looking at, and actually allow you to go and bring contextual computing back into the information which is being sent to you to augment the moment that you're living through right now. Reg, you asked a question, what's the biggest thing which can slow things down? Most of those devices, whether actually what the team before us showed, or whether it's smartwatches, smart glasses, wearable cameras, most of them are battery powered. And battery is a key word in mobile. You know, this is actually is going to be all about trying to go and fight against how fast you're going to consume this 600-700 milliamp hour battery that you're carrying. So I think that actually, if anything is going to work against the growth of the wearable world, is going to be battery. And how do you make sure that actually all those great processing stuff that you guys are inventing can be done in a power budget that people actually can last a day with, and not actually 1 hour?
Well, I'm going to dive right into the challenge, right? So the battery, I think, is a big one, and it's a formidable one. But on the non-technical side, I think there's a lot of that perception and acceptance that needs to happen at a massive scale. And I don't know if that's a cultural shift that we just need to wait and see it happen, or if that's something that technology can kind of inch towards helping people understand it being more acceptable to some of those privacy concerns, whether it's real or not. But I think that's going to be another big hurdle as well.
So, I'm going to point this right at you, Remi. $50 million is not that much money, right? Particularly, like, I can't imagine the sleepless nights. I mean, we were in the middle of closing our round, and I was stressed. No one even knew what wearables was from the consumer side, and you're building something that's totally different. How did you tell us about how you got your funding? And I'd love for you guys to react and say, hey, this is something that's interesting to us, because Jerome, you buy companies. I bet you have a whole lot of input on who should be acquired. Just gonna guess that. And you invest in them. Tell us that story and tell us how you did it.
Yeah, so from an investment standpoint, I think one of the things that we really focus on, and of course it's a very nascent time, so we're, I guess, really just interested to see how this technology gets applied, because I don't think we have really seen the scenarios that nobody has expected wearable to be able to deliver yet. And I think that's going to come when the platform is somewhat contained. So if it goes to a different culture, where wearable is not an acceptable form to capture data around you. So maybe if you go to Thai, it's a totally different world. So how do they, I guess, apply the technology, and what kind of results are we going to see? And I think the other part, from an investment standpoint, is it's got to be pretty the scale, and I guess the innovation has to be there, right? So if how much data are you generating, and as a platform company, how can we capture that data and extract all the intent and all the different insights that I think will only come when it's scaled at a certain pace.
All right, Remi, tell us how you did it. How'd you get the money?
I use my best French accent. I think that actually a few things, actually many things. First off, you have to have an unbelievable belief in your vision.
Absolutely.
If you will get more no's that you will get a yes. I think you get roughly 10 no's for a yes, or 10 you're screwed up for, wow, what you're doing is amazing. At one point in time, the tendency is this ratio to reverse itself. But by that time, you have either survived and you will be very successful or not. You need to fail fast. I think that actually I've realized that there is a point in time where, venture capitals, I think when they are not strategics, have a tendency to have very limited patience. And as such, they have a tendency to want to go and bank on the right ideas. And unfortunately, it comes with a lot of proof points, more and more and more proof points. In our company, we made our problems way more difficult. Reg is right, we've raised $50 million, 50. But you have to know that actually we are we are a processor company. We're doing actually old school cheap stuff. Yeah. How many people are doing cheap stuff in that? Apart from my colleague Jerome, we won't have many. The problem when you do chip is actually we're going to do a tape out, which is actually to productize our new chip in a month from now. The mere fact of doing that cost us $5 million. Okay, so you can see that actually the numbers at stake are extremely high. But the fundamentals of the question remain the same. We fundamentally went after a gap which we know was going to happen, or we felt was going to happen, which was the gap between more and more vision processing being required to go and be able to understand the world you're looking at. And for us, the asymptote is very easy. We want our processor to become as good as our eyes plus brain combined, which is obviously a pretty hectic vision, but the more there is a gap, the more actually we can apply processing, so that actually when you are wearing glass, when you are wearing any smart cameras on yourself or your mobile devices, you can really understand and make sense of the world that actually your cameras are looking at, which today is equal to 0, and you will see in the coming years that actually this is going to dramatically change. We went after that space with a vengeance, and we created an architecture around that. When we started this journey, those wearable worlds were not talked about. Okay, we are in this chip business, so when we start to think of an idea, you see the results of them 4 or 5 years after. Obviously, you need to come, that vision we really believed in, and like I said, we've been investing a lot of energy, we failed a lot, but we've kept going at it, and we've been able to adjust ourselves along the way, and fundamentally retarget the technology to where it's needed. What's also, I think, very important is, and I'm really encouraging actually the entrepreneur in the room to think of, don't bullshit people, because it's a very small scene. People have a very long-lasting memory, and you need to show and execute on what you're talking about. There is no need to go and develop fluffy story. You need to be able to go and put in words and in actions what you are committing yourself to. That's this level of credibility is a function of how deterministic your execution will be. So I'm also encouraging you to be very consistent in the way actually you're focusing on execution. And at the end, the last comment I would say is that, like anybody else, you need a little bit of luck, and you need to have a little bit of support. And I think that what Reg is doing here, to have this incubation and this acceleration going on in this room, is of fundamental importance for the wearable technology, because you will have very dark moments. Very dark moment. And when you get buddies, an ecosystem around you supporting you to make it happen, this is actually why innovation happens in this part of the world and nowhere else. So thank you, Reg, for putting that together for the wearable industry.
Great, really nice. So Jerome, to kind of come off of what Remi was saying, you've done hardware products from a design and branding standpoint. What are the things that you think need to happen from a hardware, from a wearable side, to create the consumer pull? That, hey, I need to have this. Like, what are those products that you see?
Well, let me come back on Remi's point first, and then we'll come into what's the consumer view of all this. I think you said a couple of things that are really key. Know where you're good and don't bullshit. But even for a semi company like Rambus, we're taking more and more a systems architectural view. So you've got to look at the device, the wearable, as not only a capture mechanism, but a compute mechanism as well. So we look in terms of like architectural control points of what is the device, what is the edge, what is the cloud, and making sure that there's a viable architecture. So even if your technology, your offer, your innovation is specific to one area, think of it in the context of the overall architecture. So it's not just capture, it's local compute, and that might have implications on power and display. So what we're looking at is, does this make sense architecturally? And I think consumers feel that too, because we're at a point where it's early adopters saying, there's a finite use case where this would be relevant. And today, the opportunities are really more when they're verticalized, they're very segment-based. This is a specific set of use cases where I could use that. So it hasn't hit that mass adoption yet. And I think that's what we're going to see in the proliferation over the next set of years, is finding these very thinly sliced, verticalized opportunities where you just nail it. And if you do that, you're going to be successful, but from a TAM, from an addressable market perspective, it might be more finite. So I think what we'll see is verticals sort of touching each other, where it works perfectly in one vertical, but it can be applied to another. You know, finally, I envision, I don't like these charm bracelets, but I could see in the future the ability to just have interoperable sensors that I just string together, and they then define the things that are important to me. And they're perfectly interoperable. I set them up easily, highly functional, easy to set up. That would be the ideal state, and I think we are moving toward that.
So I think that this is one of those interesting moments. I think we all have iPhones or Androids, and there's always something running in the background, and not all apps are equal. Some apps really suck your battery, and some apps are a little bit more just suck. But in general, I think that that's an important thing. So as we're creating applications that run on top of like tiny batteries and different things like that, how do we realize that we've got to actually share that load and collaborate and coordinate together so that we can take the smallest footprint possible and still deliver the kind of user experience that's important? Because if we all take a huge battery life cycle footprint in our applications that are running in the background, all of a sudden you've got a whole entire consumer segment that basically says, yeah, I don't like this because my smartwatch or my smart glasses only last like 20 minutes, and then somebody tries to regulate it and whatever. I think that that's one of those important things that you talked about around the verticalization. Where I really want to know is we're at such an early stage, building these things and pushing these things out, and I think it's so important for us as we're all kind of sitting in a room trying to figure out all the different things that we're going to build and create in the future, that, what's really going to make people care. I've got this great poster on my wall that's, one of the things is make me care. And what are the products that you guys see coming out in the next like 6 months that are going to actually resonate with the end consumer base, that they're actually going to care about, so much so that it pushes this ecosystem forward? Remi, you're building stuff for this. You're investing. Jerome, you're acquiring. Now, they're acquiring companies, so if you've got one, you want to pitch Jerome later, I have his phone number for $20 so we can buy a new sound system.
You're already late. I'm going to jump on his page.
There we go. So what are those things that are going to make and resonate with that overall ecosystem? And then I'll open it up to questions after this.
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk about a specific product or vertical, because I think, just like Jerome said, there's going to be many of these niche vertical experiences that people are going to nail one after another. But for mass consumer adoption, and I think there needs to be a killer app that delivers some kind of consumer experience that's really obvious, where the benefit is wearable first, and the wearable is the only platform that can deliver that kind of experience. And I think the experience of that product is going to be something where it has to enhance the human experience, right? Because I think with all this, technology has gone mainstream, right? Like everybody is, I think there's pressure to deliver on some kind of innovation, some kind of disruption, whether you're in tech or not. And I think with that kind of pressure comes this insatiable appetite, comes so much innovation and need to do it that the human factor sometimes gets left out. So you get this kind of innovation for the sake of innovation. So I think what can bring that back and make people at a visceral level understand this is helping me do something that I already want to do as a human, that's probably going to help it leave this room and go mainstream. So it's not a product, but I think it's more of a philosophy.
I think my answer is going to be a bit more boring. I think the part of the answer to the question needs to be who was, unfortunately, we are in a world where very few driving forces from a platform standpoint drive actually the tech world. And I think that actually, and definitely Microsoft is one of them, we need to understand what each one of them is also trying to do to understand what I think we're going to see coming in the next few years. I would say that whenever vision can help in GPS-denied area, that's a big deal for one big company in Mountain View. I think that actually indoor navigation is going to become actually a hot topic. in the coming years. And vision odometry is something that you will see more and more active. So anybody working in the glass, smart glass or wearable tech where cameras are being used, I think actually this is a topic that you should look very seriously at, because at the end of the day we spend 80% of our time in buildings, 20% outside, but fundamentally when you go on Google Maps, 100% of the data is outside, not inside. So that's a bit of a problem. The other actually big trend I think that we will see in the coming years is around the ability for your mobile device to see the world in 3D. So Apple did make a big move 2 weeks ago with a company called PrimeSense. I think actually that's something that the entire community here needs to look at very seriously, because the ability to capture actually depth of any object, to go and be able to recreate 3D objects out of any scene being captured, is something which is going to open a wide area of innovation, because when you move from 2D to 3D capture, sky is the limit at this stage. So I would say way more, far less philosophically and way more, I would say at the product level, I think there are two big trends which are going to lead to a lot of innovation in the coming 2 years.
I'll just follow on with the great points that were already made. You know, I see it as a bimodal distribution, with one hump being much wider than the other. So I've already spoken to the verticalized applications. I don't think that everybody cares about quantified self. You know, if you're a cycling freak like me, you want all of the data that you can access, your wattage, your heart rate, the altitude, everything that, you know, the barometric pressure, etc. Most people don't care. So I think we're going to see continued vertical slices where quantified data of the environment of myself is important. But I think the other thing that we should all pay huge attention to is fashion. And I think we're going to see fashion brands adopting this sort of technology, and it will become fashion. Probably with limited functionality, but it will be aspirational fashion. So keeping the price point right, integrating it to brands that matter, that's going to be the big catalyst in uptake.
I wanted to have a couple questions, but I think we're kind of out of time. But that's okay, because I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to network. I've got, one, thank you gentlemen for coming out. Huge favor to me and huge favor to the community, just to kind of be a part of this during the holiday season when everything is crazy and it's like, oh. Secondly, I want you guys to look around at how packed the room is. It's an indicator of a very growing community. I didn't fake sell out tickets. We sold out and then we extended and put it out a little bit higher. And we're going to be doing these all over the world. Hopefully, I'm going to say 30 cities by end of Q1 to kind of push it. Kyle, my co-founder, is dying, but that's okay. I believe we'll do it. But a lot of this is kind of a testament to you. I mean, your wearable world is what you make of it and what you bring to the table. And so hopefully, we're going to fill it with really great people and we're going to see some amazing things happen. So give yourselves an applause. Thank you for coming out. You guys really suck it. Give yourselves